Welcome to Think Big with Dan and Qasim. Join hosts Dan Melnick and Qasim Masood as they explore big ideas, limitless possibilities, and engage with visionaries, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders who dare to dream big, get inspired, motivated, and find practical tips for personal growth. Think big, dream bigger, and ignite your potential.
All right, welcome to Think Big with Dan and Qasim, and our guest today is Matthew. So, Matthew, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, tell us where you live and what you do for a living.
Sure. Based in Kansas City, I'm an architectural and design photographer. I've been doing it full-time freelance for coming very, very close to 10 years now. So yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it as far as clients go. I mean, most of them are architects, interior designers, custom home builders, remodeling companies. And yeah, just been a sole proprietor in that field for quite a while.
Awesome. So what made you want to get into photography in the first place?
I mean, I'd always been a creative person, air quotes creative one way or another. Even as a kid, I drew, I played instruments. I built things with construction paper. I mean, there was always some sort of creative outlet. As a kid, I had kind of this pie in the sky dream that it would be amazing if I could do something creative for work. But it just never really thought it'd be a reality. And then photography was always a hobby. And then the more I started to really dive into it, eventually you start getting hit with people going, hey, I'll pay you $20, $50 to photograph this. And then it just kind of snowballs. And then eventually I made my way into the architecture genre.
Awesome. So can you just talk more about that and making your way into architecture? Because obviously, as you mentioned, it's one thing to go and do it as a hobby. Many people will take pictures, post them on social media, but it's a different thing to actually go and work at a high level in the architecture space. So what did that look like for you?
Well, I mean, it started at what a lot of photographers in this genre could consider a low barrier of entry, and that's real estate. So real estate photography is an entry point for a lot of photographers looking to get into this genre. So, and I say low barrier of entry because if you look at Zillow listings, there's the quality of photos, they're all over the place. So there's pristine, amazing photos, and then there's just crummy, photos that are taken with someone's iPhone. So, and there's always new real estate agents coming in on the market. There's always it's kind of a revolving door. So your clientele can be ever changing. So that was, when I got into it up to that point, I had photographed a lot of different things. And at this point, it was a kind of a side hustle. It was something I would do on the evenings or weekends. But yeah, I was at kind of just a restaurant with a big group of friends. And one of them was a real estate agent. And she said, yeah, we hire photographers all the time to photograph our listings. And I never thought about it. And I go, oh yeah, I guess you do. And it kind of piqued my interest and saw somewhat low-hanging fruit at the time, which at this point was about 14 years ago when that first happened. And got into it, started to appreciate more of the artistic side of the subjects I was shooting, being the properties, and realized that in order to spend the time that I needed to create just these amazing, beautiful images, I'd eventually have to get out of real estate, because that subgenre of architecture and design photography it's not very conducive to time. It's very fast paced. It's very get in, get out. Whereas like the clientele that I'm working for now, they want you to take your time. They want you to kind of go slow. They prefer quality over quantity.
That makes sense. What was your job before? Because you mentioned it was sort of like a side hustle. So what was your job before? Because you mentioned also it was not very artistic, right? So what did that look like for you?
Yeah, my last regular job, if you want to term it like that, was I was VP of sales and marketing for a wheel and caster manufacturing company. Probably that's the least sexy job I think that exists on planet Earth. And I had it. I was literally just sitting at a desk for pretty much the whole day, working on catalogs and marketing materials and not doing a whole lot on the sales side. We had a whole other dedicated sales team, but it was not very fun, but it was a foreign-owned company. And unfortunately, one day my position was like a line item, and they said, hey, we need to cut the budget, and that meant cutting my job. So I was laid off, and I was kind of forced into pursuing what I had done as just kind of a side gig, to make it full time.
Right, that makes sense. So when it comes to what you're doing now, you mentioned that you're focused more in the architecture space. So can you just tell an audience what exactly that means and what the scope of your work actually look like? I guess even more of a typical day in your job right now.
Sure. I mean, I can give you an example like yesterday. Yesterday was a full day of photographing. It was all on one property. So it was for a builder, it's for a custom home builder. And I had scouted the location before, meaning I had visited the property with the builder, I think it was 2 weeks before, just to get an idea of the space and find out what position the house was pointed, north, south, east, west, what rooms are going to look best during what time of day, and then kind of come up with a plan of attack, come up with a shot list. And that way, when I go the day of the shoot, I'm not walking in blind. Some shoots are like that, but ideally that's how I like to work. And then the day of the shoot, I arrived at 8:30, left at, I think it was 4 o'clock to take a bit of a break, and then came back around 6:15 to start photographing some twilight evening shots, one interior and the rest were exterior. So yeah, I mean, photographing wise, it's a full day of shooting. And then based on all the files and editing, I probably have at least a full another day of editing. That's the unsexy side of what I do. The half of it is still being stuck behind a computer, unfortunately.
Makes sense. So when it comes to finding your current clients, what does that look like for you?
At this point, a lot of it is referral. I'm not doing a whole lot of cold calling or reaching out to companies very cold. This sounds a little conceited or pretentious, however you want to put it, but most of the clients who aren't my current clients, who I would like to work for, they kind of know who I am already, which is perfectly fine. There's plenty of work to go around, but in all reality, here in Kansas City, there's probably 10 or less photographers in this genre who most would consider good quality to excellent. There's a lot of photographers, but as far as the ones that, the interior design industry goes to, as far as photographing their projects or custom home builders call, there's really only a handful. So it's a good and a bad thing. But yeah, I mean, I a lot of my marketing efforts at this point, it's more kind of branding things just to kind of keep reminding people that I still exist. And then to me, a big part of the branding is your pricing, which I'm definitely not considered a cheap photographer. And then just doing things kind of within the industry and community to just keep putting my face and my name out there.
What does it look like for you when it comes to scalability in terms of like the bigger vision? Are you planning on hiring more people under you? Like, what does it look like for you in terms of growth?
Growth would just be, the simplest answer is just simply raising prices, honestly, which just comes along with more experience and skill, and then the clientele as well. So yeah, growth. I've kicked around the idea of hiring, some another photographer, but as far as anybody on my team, so to speak, sometimes I outsource my editing, and that's about it, because so much of my work is me. It's the branding. My name is the company. So, kind of relinquishing some of that control it's your baby. So, giving that up to somebody else where things could go sideways, it's just another headache that I don't want to do. There's plenty of freelance architectural photographers who are still one-person shows, and that's kind of my goal. So scalability would just be expanding the client base and keep raising prices so you're not shooting multiple shoots in a week, honestly.
So what would you say is the biggest challenge that you're facing right now?
Challenge now is the biggest one now is scheduling. Honestly, we have certain events and contests, awards that a lot of my clients submit things for, and they say they need something photographed by X amount of dates. So here in Kansas City, they all tend to land on around the same time. So you have clients calling out of desperation, like, oh my God, I need this photographed before the end of the month. And you're looking at the calendar and it's like, I can't fit you in unless somebody cancels. So I'm not the best at scheduling. I will sometimes overbook myself to the point of like borderline exhaustion. Yesterday was a good case in point. There's no way I could do what I did yesterday and then mentally be ready 100% to do the same exact thing again like today. It's just there's no way. So yeah, like I mentioned before, ideally I would love to have 1 to 2 shoots a week. That's about it. But sometimes I'll book 3 or 4, and which is a dumb move on my part.
Makes sense. So obviously now in 2023, many companies are looking for ways to use high level technology like AI. So do you use AI in your business? And if not, what are some of the use cases that you could see helping your business?
Well, I mean, we're on the cusp of still relatively early stages of using AI. AI already right now has been integrated into our editing software, especially Photoshop. That was kind of a big deal when Photoshop started integrating AI into like their beta programs. Now it's in their main ones. To me, it's a huge advantage. Especially when removing things in my images. I'm getting kind of nitpicky here, but yeah, I mean, if clients ask, hey, there's a vehicle or light switches or things that could be removed, it could before, but it took a whole lot of work. I'll give you a case in point. I had a builder who, it was a brand new house, and per the city ordinances, they had to plant this really long, kind of pathetic looking tree. It was a brand new tree. It was probably 30 feet tall, but kind of blocked a good chunk of the house. And the home builder asked, hey, in that final image, that the photo looks beautiful, but can you take out the tree? And I could. A year ago, it would have taken me 2 to 3 hours because it was so intricate. Now, it was the first time I ever really did an in-depth or deep dive into using AI, and it took me 20 minutes. So AI did most of the heavy lifting, and I had to do some fine tweaking because it's still not perfect. But yeah, for the most part, I look forward to it. Some photographers honestly are like kind of freaking out that they think it's going to replace their job, and I don't necessarily, unless you hire robots to physically walk into your property. I don't see that happening, but
Right. Yeah.
nothing's impossible. But yeah, right now it's a tool like anything else. I think there was still a somewhat similar level of fear when photographers switched from film to digital, and a big fear when camera phones became available. Now everybody can be a photographer. It's like technology changes, so you just have to adapt and integrate it one way or another.
100%. So what would you say is the one biggest piece of advice that you wish you knew before you started this company?
That everything's going to be okay. It's just you have to keep going. I've told people before, I think if you were starting your own gig, whatever that is, I mean, and anything entrepreneurial, if you were to ask most people, like say 100 people, I would guess 90, some of them would say, yeah, I wish I could do my own thing. But you're going to be in the single digits of the people who will actually do it or who actually try. And of those, say 10 or less percent, there's few who are going to keep doing it, because as soon as things get tough or it gets hard, they go, okay, I can't do this, I'm out. And that is where most people who in hindsight could be viewed as successful entrepreneurs, they look back and go, oh, how'd they do it? And I think a common thread you'll find is they just kept going. Good and bad times, they just pushed ahead no matter through the peaks and valleys, and just kept going.
Yeah, that's so true. And we talk about that all the time on this show because, to your point, I've always heard this expression that there's no such thing as a failed entrepreneurs who just quit, right? So
Yeah,
it's a matter, if you're staying persistent and consistent, that's going to pay off in the long run.
very true.
So if somebody watching this wanted to reach out to you, do you mind sharing your website or social media handles, best way to get in contact with you?
Sure. Social media is I try to stay fairly active on Instagram. It's Matthew A Photo. My website is matthewaphoto.com. I also have a YouTube channel. It's relatively small, all things considered. I think I just passed the 10,000 subs, which is kind of a milestone. In a way, it's big, but it's not. That is, I think, youtube.com/@Matthew A Photo. So yeah, pretty much everything is Matthew A Photo, and that's Matthew with 2 T's.
Awesome. Well, Matthew, it was a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time, and we're rooting for you.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on. Thank you very much.
All right. Bye.